Hi everyone, Mark here from Universal Asylum again. Look, I just felt I should acknowledge that, I perhaps didn't do the greatest job of expressing some of the things or certain points in reflection that I may not have covered in, my last little video. I guess defining what I meant by world leaders formally pledging their fealty to Universal Asylum. In working towards building building a world trust. Now, I don't know, I spotted the yachts and I thought it'd be a really good place to park. Just another nice backdrop, I guess since we're considering raising the standard of living for all, which doesn't necessarily mean everyone gets a yacht, unfortunately. However, hopefully, the idea is, I guess more about raising the standard of living for everyone in the more important aspects of life rather than these consumerist fucking things that everyone's supposed to, work hard for and get blamed for if they do not, if they fall short of the mark, etc. I did actually write a few things down which I haven't been able, and then I fucking fuck knows where I've put them. I guess one thing that I probably, the lack of stability in our global markets at the moment, whilst I guess raising that standard of living, I guess it's Universal Asylum is trying to, in creating or working towards a one world leaderless system of governance that is highly automated. An aspect of that is, I guess, creating or facilitating global stability, or a system that is able to facilitate, I guess, adaptation to the ever-increasing complexities of contemporary society, whilst facilitating or maintaining a certain level of global stability, which is, quite an opposite to the sense of, I guess, a traditional oppressive style governing. Now, like I've said before, there is, massive aspects of our society which it's, quite a lot of lip service around things like embracing diversity and stuff like that. However, at the same time as trying to micromanage how people embrace such supposed diversity, a bit like fucking Metallica, fucking, you can do it your own way if it's done just how I say. Well, that's hardly fucking embracing diversity. But, if we're going to create systems where, there does, like I've said, require a massive degree of honesty for these systems to work, for these systems to update our legislation and undertake a complex range of, I guess, this stuff it rules obsolete things like, does it rule obsolete? I was going to say it rules obsolete things like research. Now, there will still, what it does is it changes the nature of research. There still will be room for roles surrounding, I guess, in relation to the processing of certain data and I guess the accumulation of data and how that data is used and the efficiency of those systems. I mean, I heard someone on the news the other day about is it a plebiscite where they get all the plebs to fucking vote over fucking son, and then they ignore what they fucking say anyway, and it costs like fucking billions of dollars and shit. Is that what they call it? Something like that. I'm talking about a system that does mass accumulation of data from people, and simple stuff, and some of filling in that can be incorporated into what I've mentioned earlier in things like or as a component of, say, the stratification of employment and community participation. I guess encouraging people to provide certain information. There might be simple things such as, do people want, the shops to be open more, changing shopping hours, and, so everyone ticks yes, no, and then we go, oh, look, everyone wants the shops to be open more. We go, oh, shit, but we don't have the, then we can make decisions based on that. However, it needs to be able to make them decisions and weigh up on, like, I guess, complex multifactor analysis type scales, because not necessarily everything a society wants is what it needs. We might want shops to be open for extra hours. However, what we might need is, I guess, more roles to be undertaken in relation to caring for our aging population, etc. Now, all of that stuff will require balance and a certain degree of working together as a community. I am very much an advocate for a large degree of freedom of exploration. I think we also need to create a more loving and forgiving society, a more patient, more tolerant, yet as opposed to a fear-driven society. I mean, when I look at the 3 basic instincts of my, say, the inventory I undertook through, say, my AA or NA 4th step analysis, which I undertook the more traditional AA way, but the 3 instincts, it looked at how fear surrounding our sex, social and security instincts, I guess, resulted in us developing often unhealthy, counterproductive and destructive patterns of thought and behaviour and stuff like that, such as, dishonesty with self and others, selfish, self-seeking, inconsiderate, impatient, intolerant, all of those, quite manipulative, all of those type behaviours, and then using that information to practice courage around those defects of character, so to speak, in practicing the opposite, things like practicing courage to be honest and blah 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 blah, patience, practicing, you fucking start trying to, I guess, meditate around some of these things and trying to, so you build like that subconscious awareness of, where your defects are, so to speak, and then I guess making a self-commitment to attempting to do your best to practice the opposite. It might be things like patience. I find I can become impatient and intolerant of inanimate objects such as traffic lights, and I found I had a lot of it's not like bias or prejudice against things like fucking taxis, which just, for some reason taxis don't have to abide by the same fucking road rules as everyone else. They just do what they fucking want. And 4-wheel drives I aren't particularly fucking fond of either, but you know what I mean. I had to, if I wanted those to stop affecting me negatively in my life, I had to learn to, or practice, things like patience, tolerance, and becoming more selfless and serving others and stuff like all of that stuff. That was how I made amends. All those little, I guess, behavioural modifications, and enabled me to become a better father and improve upon all of my relationships. And I think, we need to look at that in society as well. There's a lot of talk about accountability. I think we need to be encouraging people to be self-accountable rather than trying to, use fear to enforce accountability upon people. We do not have the resources. It is unrealistic. It is, and what point is it, other people's fear using to micromanage fucking, other people and all the problems that creates. So I guess I am very much looking at facilitating that transition from a fear-driven society to a love-driven society, which, has a great deal of complexity to it that I don't always necessarily speak that well in regards to. I am very much looking and concerned with alleviating a lot of those systemic pressures and cultural pressures, that are contributing massively to our mental health crisis, and that's all tied in with our physical health crisis, which is all tied into our economic systems, and not just the economic systems, but it's time to wake up. I've been awake for fucking 3.5 hours. Shut up, cunt. Yes, so going from fear-based society to a love-based society, and removing all those systemic pressures, and that, I guess, a lot of the culturally programming that contributes to mental and physical health. I mean, it is all tied in together. That's one thing that I guess I always knew to a certain extent. However, found very much throughout my unsanctioned experimental research into the therapeutic value of psychedelics and stuff, which very much, although my motivations for undertaking those that experimental research was largely to do with mental health in terms of, my PTSD and unresolved grief and trauma. And, however, I found those medicines, were more concerned, like they prioritised what needed to be healed more surrounding my physical health, which makes sense in a natural environment where, say, it's more important for you to, like, fuck your PTSD, you need your back to fucking be fixed so you can get away from that fucking, like, panther or whatever the fucking unnatural predators were before we built this fucking, shit society and cheated nature and stuff like that. And then we'll deal with your mental health later, sort of thing, like. But it is all very much tied in, when it's all collapsed, you find your physical pain, like your mental health and your physical health can prop each other up, but also when they all collapse together, they sort of can keep each other fucking trapped down and stuff like that as well. But, highly oppressive fucking systems, and the way that, when I guess studied psychology and, I started looking at, I guess, using recognised psychotherapeutic models, etc., to understand and unpack various aspects of 12-step fellowships, etc., and then that linking into sociology and stuff like that, it become very clear how societies and typical oppressive social structures used fear surrounding your sex, security and social instincts as mechanisms of social control in, I guess, basically, manipulating the populations and in a very fear-driven type cultural structures. You see this massively. Religion is a massive example. It's riddled through it. Massive, social instinct, fear, guilt and shame, and we'll turn that fear, guilt and shame and all those social instincts against people's sex instincts and create these quite warped value systems, like, I mean, I've talked about it in terms of our, even the oppressive nature of our economic systems, and say Centrelink's fucking, the whole idea of a relationship status, like, and people base their worth on this sort of shit, but then we also subordinate and dominate them financially based on quite, this black and white idea of a relationship. Now, I was against, as I've said before, gay marriage. I personally, look, if people want to celebrate being a couple, that's absolutely fine. But however, the legal and financial aspects of marriage, I do not agree with. These are oppressive fucking social structures that are highly problematic and do not necessarily very much contradict this whole idea of embracing fucking diversity and, all of that. We're very closed-minded in this sense still in our societies. And there's massive room for improvement, and these need to be ruled obsolete. We need to start treating every individual independently financially, and we do need to facilitate the restructure of our entire economic system to facilitate this. And as I've said, this will require, I'm willing to, I have the sound theory on dimethyltryptamine and other forbidden fruit as as central nervous system specific fucking nutrients that have been withheld from dominant cultures for hundreds of years, as a form of oppression, for the purpose of social control. Now, these are the most valuable thing on the world. These are the most valuable substances in the world, and I do believe, I am willing to hand that over to, or, once I'm able to, yes, my professional opinion as a social worker, the best thing to do with that is to sign that over to Universal Asylum, all rights and authorities in perpetuity, along with challenging all world leaders and participants in our major players in our economic systems to formally pledge their fealty by signing over executive shares of all of those assets, and using that wealth to pump back into the economic systems while we facilitate this mass social change. Now, these mass social changes play very massive, deconstructing that economic institutionalization of relationships. Now, like, what do we do with bisexuals? Which partner is their partner? Like, how many partners can bisexual or fucking, I don't know how many. We've created all these binaries on different types of fucking sexuals. I personally, as I've expressed on, the Universal Asylum webpage under, Advanced Anatomy, Kendra Lust's Advanced Anatomy titled fucking gender, that, what even constitutes, if gender is a social construct and, sex isn't even black and white, and there is so many, like, what actually constitutes a fucking sexual fucking act, why the fuck are we basing people's economic statuses on these fucking things? Who's to say, like, if someone is bisexual, do you have to calculate, like, what percentage of their sexuality is fucking directed towards, like, what male and female, to try and calculate which partner they put down on their fucking Centrelink? And if they have, like, 15 partners, do you just not pay them anything at all because we assume you've got 15 partners? That means economically you're meant to depend upon them, because we create dependence and then we blame domestic violence on the fucking individual. It's absolutely absurd. What we need to do is we need to reform our entire economic structure to facilitate financial independence as a fucking base level. And that's a healthy, people need to be supporting themselves, or financially independent to support themselves, a healthy fucking lifestyle. You need to stop forcing people into poverty. If you want to stop not only domestic violence, but what's the other fucking term? Like, violence in general. If you want to reduce the prevalence of violence in our societies, you need people to be dependent. You need to stop over-capitalizing by creating high-density living. This subdivision, the rich constantly buying properties, subdividing them and stacking people on top of each other. We've got the problem I'm in government housing. I should be grateful for that. We have a very poorly designed flat which perpetuates potentially violent situations. We had one of my neighbours attack the other neighbour with a machete recently. There's been other conflicts. I've experienced conflict myself within that complex. It's a very difficult environment to manage. These environments are created, and mine's only on a small scale. When you look at the larger cities across the fucking globe, where we have created mass fucking high density ghettos which are riddled with violence and all of these problems. There is no reason for this. We have the resources you know, once upon a time, you know, the price of housing has, if we look at, say, once upon a time when houses were made of cobblestones and it took a certain amount of fucking resources to build a motor vehicle, and the price of housing and a motor vehicle and a business suit was all structured around, you know, like, you know, the average wage, and then that was all structured around the family institution, which assumed you had a wife at home to do all the other stuff, and you know, there was a contract which sort of basically you had the ownership over her but had to support her, all of that shit. You know, we need to restructure our entire economy. You know, houses no longer, with our prefab technology and stuff like that, we can slap up fucking houses wherever we want, particularly in a land like Australia where we have got vast amounts of fucking space. You know, there is no reason to create high density ghettos here. You know, when we have fucking like countless fucking desert where we can build fucking houses with big fucking yards so people can make as much fucking noise or as little noise as they want and fucking not get under each other's skin. We can actually fucking do that. And the only reason we aren't doing that is because we are clinging on to these old, out-of-date fucking economic structures, these old, out-of-date social structures, you know, cultural structures that have been traditionally imposed by, you know, they were originally, this stuff was, I guess, you know, things like religion were used as a patriarchal institution of social control to impose those fucking value systems upon people. However, even though there has been a, I guess, large decline in religious participation over, you know, really, particularly in the last 50 years or so, many of those value systems are still have lingered within our society, these romanticized ideas of relationships, which are often highly problematic, you know, where you have people imposing such value systems and trying to, you know, beat people to death with some fucking fantasy of a relationship they conjured up throughout their childhood, you know, that isn't necessarily compatible with others or, you know, true or very loving to the person that they're imposing this stuff upon, you know. You know, and then we're very much moving to harsher and harsher, like, let's try and fucking, it is completely unmanageable, you know, by ruling out things such as marriage and this type of legal contracts, you rule out things like divorce. Sort of had to escort a mate to the divorce courts the other day. The amount of bullshit that goes with that. People need to be able to more freely transition or explore relationships and more freely transition through relationships if need be, I guess, in exploring what works for them. And you know, we are wasting resources. We have made, personally, you want to solve fucking domestic violence, instead of pretending that all men are fucking violent, fucking easy, you break up, fucking child access 50-50. We've created an environment where women, all they have to do is like, oh, I'm scared of him. And then they turn around and wonder, right? So she uses a system to take his child away, drives them fucking mad, and you wonder why some of these men snap and end up fucking doing obscene, fucking horrible, absolutely horrible things. Fucking, you know, this stuff does arguably contribute to people fucking snapping and killing children and women. Fucking straight out. You know, you're not allowed, well, that's victim blaming. Victim blaming, is it? We've created a system where people like Rosie Bourne's able to scream in my face that my dad dying's the best thing that ever happened to her, but if I hit her, it's fucking, it's victim blaming if I hit her, to say that she fucking deserved that. You know, we have created a system where people can use the most fucking, the most precious sentimental thing to any parent is their fucking child. You know, that was my rock bottom, you know, I fucking didn't do too much bad when I was fucking a drug addict. You know, due to my dad protected me from a lot of that stuff. You know, my dad fucking, you know, basically said, you know what, you think you can control your fucking drug habits? Like, you know, here's a never-ending supply of drugs. Now show me how much control you've got. Basically, what he did was he manipulated me to go to the AA meeting, right? Fucking by telling me, because he was sober, he'd found recovery through AA finally after losing like two families, you know, two wives, two sets of children. And he'd finally got sober in mid-40s, and he could see me in him, and he didn't want me to turn out like him. He was also, you know, fuck, Dad had been caught for importing heroin from fucking Penang. Like, they would have hung him if he got caught in fucking Singapore, but he got caught on his way back in through Melbourne and ended up in Pentridge, where he nearly got fucking killed. Then the police fucking tried to get him to, you know, alleged that fucking he was importing the heroin for someone, and fucking tried to get him to deliver it, so he fucked off with the heroin, and then later robbed the drug squad and fucking had the police fucking wanting to kill him, and somehow managed to survive all that shit, and you know, was very traumatised by this whole fucking circumstances created by this bullshit fucking war on drugs that fucking was based upon racism. Anyway, fucking Dad was petrified because he could see that I had the same illness as him, and he knew enough about, through his recovery of alcoholism and stuff like that, he knew that I couldn't be told. However, he knew that I wasn't stupid. He knew if I needed to reach my own rock bottom. So basically what he did was, like, he had finally found recovery, and he'd changed. He'd used the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous to, he was actually a totally different person to the man I knew throughout my childhood. Don't have time to go into details of that, very, very complex stuff. But he was a completely different fucking person, but he was growing some dope because that's what he knew how to do. Anyway, he come across me, we reunited after I'd been off for a few years. Complicated. I'd been at that stage out of home for 4 years. I was 2 years completely independent. You know, I was 17. Massive drug habits by then, massive amphetamine habits. Basically, he told me I couldn't have any dope, alcohol or heroin unless I went to the AA meeting, or NA meeting I think he sent me to, and he got his friend to take me to the meeting, right? He fucking wouldn't even give me a cone, the cunt. What he knew would happen is he knew I couldn't be told, because like the police had tried to beaten it out of me, fucking the teachers, everyone, like I would have just fucked off. I was independent. You know, he knew he couldn't tell me to stop. I would have just fucked off. So what he did, but he knew that if he said, promise that I could have some beer and some heroin if I went to the meeting, that I'd go. He also knew that I would identify there, and that would plant seeds, I guess, subconscious seeds that would completely destroy my massive denial and any enjoyment that I had in using drugs and alcohol. So I went to the AA meeting and I identified with them. What I identified with was, I identified with the way that they felt, particularly. I didn't have the stories of them. I hadn't lost the children, the houses and wives and all that shit. I'd never had any of that stuff at that age. However, what I identified with was what happened when they had a drink. See, I thought I had control because I could consume more drugs and alcohol than most people. I always could. From the moment of even being an 11, 12-year-old, I could grab a bottle of Grant's fucking whiskey and I could fucking drink the lot. And, you know, I would just glow, and it was like my solution to everything. I had an illusion of control. However, it wasn't, that took a lot of breaking, you know, like, but what I did, you know, I guess those early meetings planted these seeds in my head that, you know, the way I felt, what happened, that compulsion once I started consuming these substances, that I had to continue consuming them. What would happen if I had a substance and I run out, and that overwhelming craving that I would experience, all of that sort of stuff. But one of the things that they, you know, one of the other massive things that they that I didn't identify with, but I appealed to me, was the sense of peace and serenity that some of those people had. Like, not all of them, because a lot of them were sick people trying to get well, and that was okay, you know. That was something I did find very attractive. And even though I didn't want to be an alcoholic, I mean, I was still a teenager. I had, you know, the idea of sobriety didn't fit with my, you know, I wanted the never-ending supply of drugs and, you know, whatever. And, you know, but so he got me to go to the meeting, and then he tried to create, it was like the controlled demolition of a building, you know. So he got me to the meeting to plant the seeds that would destroy my denial and lead to my own rock bottom. And then he created an environment, a learning environment for me by taking me to Whyalla. He basically helped me understand the system. He taught me about clean needles, fucking gave me access to health systems, took me to Whyalla, fucking filled up a couple of houses, or got me into public housing where we proceeded to grow hydro and stuff like that, and basically said, all right, smartass, you think you can control your fucking drugs? Here's a never-ending supply of drugs and alcoholic. Now show me how you can control your drug use. And basically supervised my destruction and allowed me, you know, made sure I had access to, you know, I guess, made sure I wasn't committing crime. Yes, he grew a lot of dope for me. Of course, I never grew any. Of course I did. I fucking got busted for growing dope fucking twice. You know, fuck, when I was, what, I think 19 and 20, or 19 and maybe 21, whatever. You know, but I wasn't out fucking robbing people. I wasn't, you know, committing major crime, dangerous, you know, I wasn't. He made things as safe as possible. Access to consistent, safe supplies of fucking whatever. He was brewing my beer while I was getting sicker and fucking sicker. I remember he's going to his AA meetings, practicing his recovery. He surrounded me by recovering alcoholics who never pushed recovery on me, but were just there, you know, and humoured me and, you know, planted seeds that, you know, I needed to reach my rock bottom. He knew his rock bottom required him to lose 2 wives, 2 sets of kids, be like mid-40s where life was nearly fucking over, for him to like finally fucking get desperate enough to get fucking sober. You know what my biggest fucking rock bottom was? Fucking having my boy Caleb, you know, throughout that whole pregnancy. I was fucking gonna stop tomorrow, every day. I was gonna stop. I was fucking drinking. You know, when I had fucking Caleb, I had a fucking huge morphine habit, a massive, I couldn't stop drinking. You know, at my worst, I was banging up to 500 milligrams of morphine a day, fucking drinking like a carton of piss, a fucking, there was a time when I went to the fucking Dassa, I was drinking a fucking carton of piss, a box of fucking Woodstock, like 20 pack of fucking Woodstock, oh no, 12 pack, half slab of Woodstock, because they were like $20, and a fucking often a 40-ounce tequila on top of it per day, on top of a fucking morphine habit, on top of benzos, and smoking as much fucking dope as one can physically fucking smoke. I was fucking sick, you know, and I had this beautiful little baby boy, and I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop. You know, I went, and at one point I was running a habit on the original Subutex. I remember going to the doctor and telling him what I was using it, and he wouldn't believe me. And he's like, no, you'd be dead. And I'm like, no, I need help. I don't know how to stop. No, it was this big fucking Indian cunt. Not that I've got anything against Indians, but he was a cunt, right? And he wouldn't believe me. And it was like, I couldn't talk logic to him. Like, I'm not lying. I'm not asking you for drugs. Like, I need help to stop. And he's like, no. And it's like, I had drugs. I had access to drugs. I was taking, like, at that stage, I was taking about fucking over 50 Valium a day, and that wasn't, like, I was prescribed Valium Serapaks, and my panic attacks were getting worse and worse and worse, and like, but also I was buying lots of medications off of the black markets and stuff like that, you know, like, because I had a never-ending supply of fucking, you know, dope and whatever. Like, I was really sick, and then I couldn't stop, and like the rock bottom was, you know, you're dying, and you know you're dying, that emotional side of having this beautiful, like, your own flesh and blood, and I couldn't stop. You know, and that, all of those, I had to reach those rock bottoms, and I detoxed so many times, and I had to try doing recovery, like, stoned, and it didn't work for me, you know, and I don't begrudge anyone who's fucking quit fucking heroin and smokes dope, fucking good on you. It's a step in the right direction, you know. I don't agree necessarily with these ideas of, you know, some heroin addicts aren't alcoholic. That's okay. If you are, but for me, I've had to practice a massive degree of honesty surrounding this stuff. You know, I can't control you know, I have a problem with fucking these things. Fucking coffee, man. Sugar and caffeine, I do have a problem with. You know, I do maintain, for over 5 years, I haven't consumed, with the exception of this shit, and nicotine's only been about 1.5 years. Oh, I had one puff on a fucking shisha the other night. I don't even know whether that, you know, I shouldn't have. It's sort of, that's skating thin ice for me. But I haven't had a cigarette for however long. You know, well over 12 months. But as far as major, like, narcotics, I haven't used heroin, amphetamines, abused prescription medicines, all of that type of stuff for well over 5 years. Now, some people will question my recovery for, you know, in consideration of, you know, my experimentation or experimental research into the therapeutic value of psychedelics. Now, this was not something that I took lightly at all, particularly as someone in recovery. I was skeptical when they said, like, oh, they're not addictive. When I read that, I went, you fucking don't, yeah, but you don't understand. You don't understand fucking me and my susceptibility to, you know, I experienced a physical allergy to most substances. I'm very sensitive to that stuff, that type of thing, and I have to be extremely honest with myself about that. And so yes, I was approached that with massive caution, you know. But that's another thing that I won't, you know, my honesty, you know, in, say, fellowships, I struggle with the philosophy of NA. I still do have some involvement with AA, but, you know, I refuse to, you know, what they go, oh, all mind and mood altering. Like, I don't experience addiction to psychedelics because they are not addictive. It would be dishonest for me to say that psychedelics are addictive. It would also be dishonest for me to pretend that they are a problematic thing in my life, because they're fucking not. I do not believe these substances are drugs with my extensive experience with drugs. As simple as that. You know, so they're all, yeah, I guess, complexities surrounding all of that sort of stuff. Fuck, I'm trying to think how I even cut into, you know, those sort of subjects. I've sort of gone fucking way off track, like I often do. Oh, I guess part of how I ended up on, you know, in this rabbit hole of things is the significance, that emotional significance of a child, you know. And, you know, I've been very fortunate, you know, in the sense that, you know, the mother of my son and stepdaughter has, in most respects, been quite reasonable with, you know, allowing me, or not interfering with me, my ability to, you know, maintain my relationships with my children. You know, and I know I've had very positive, you know, I don't pretend to be shit for my children. You know, I'm honoured by the fact that my stepdaughter, some of the things that she trusts me to come to as a male role model and parental figure, even all these years later since I've left. You know, like, yeah, that's, you know, and they're all gifts of my recovery, my amends to my children, you know. Like, I remember my boy, like, having those bad drug habits, my little boy jumping on me and having panic attacks, and I'd have to put him off. And he didn't understand. He didn't, you know, it wasn't because I didn't love him. I couldn't be touched. You know, anyone who's had panic attacks, and the more medications they gave me, the worse it got. And you know what? Since I've come off of all those substances, I am petrified of the doctors putting me on substances that fucking, due to the severe side effects that I've experienced and how difficult they are to get off. You know, they only made my problems worse. But, you know, my love for that child, when you look at, you know, when I look at that, my own sentimentality around those, you know, the most precious thing, that was my rock bottom. My rock bottom was being unable to stop for my kids. You know, I couldn't imagine what it's like. Actually, I could, because I've got a child that I don't see, that I've never had a, you know, she's a late teens now, and I've never known her. And it was too hard. I couldn't fight for her. I didn't fight for her. And I question that still. But, you know, so I guess what I'm trying to say is I can see, based on just my own perspective as a parent, I can see how people could be driven. You know, when you unjustly just pretend because someone's got a cock that they're dangerous, you know, and use that as an excuse and then aggravate them. Then they'll say, even this whole transparency thing, when you think about stuff like, oh, record them. So you emotionally abuse someone and then record them when they fucking explode, and then go, oh, he's dangerous, and we'll take his kids and we wonder why he murders the fucking kids. And look, I'm not saying I don't want to come across like I'm fucking victim blaming, but in some circumstances I have absolutely no doubt that type of stuff has aggravated circumstances that have resulted in tragedy, is all I'm fucking saying. And that if we want to minimise this sort of stuff, we have to be realistic, because we're not going to be able to prevent every tragedy. But if we want to minimise the occasion of these type of things, we need to create a fairer fucking system. It's simple as that. More efficient and more fair. We cannot afford every fucking family to go to court over every fucking relationship and every child on the planet. It's absolutely insane. You know, we have a rapidly approaching health crisis that we don't have the resources to deal with as it is. Simple. Or it's not simple, it's complex, but you know what I'm saying. That, in respect, you know, the simple fact is we don't have the resources to be fucking around, and we need to be creating fairer, more streamlined, efficient systems. You know, is all I'm trying to say. You know, but you're not allowed to say that, because you might come across like you're victim blaming. Well, you know, it's a very hard thing, because you got, like I've mentioned my ex so many fucking times, and that woman is a social worker. She's a psychopath. You know, that woman is making decisions over whether people are fit parents, and those decisions have massive potential to affect those outcomes and stuff in relation to that. Now, I can see my battery's about to run flat, so I might sort of cut things a little bit short, even though I'm probably rambling on a bit. But I guess, you know, to facilitate these massive social changes and massive reform of all of our economic structures, that will require executive powers over all of these major assets, or in ensuring these assets are ethically managed to the interests of all, they need to become public assets. They are too dangerous to be left in the hands of any individual privately. It is, you know, there is a strong case for that statement, I believe. You know, and, you know, however, how do we create this? You know, no one trusts the governments, quite rightly so. No one can trust these greedy corporations, quite rightly so. I don't know. So all I've done is tried to my job's social work. That's my professional background, where I was trying to create a holistic organisational structure that was aimed at, I guess, promoting or facilitating mass complex social reform, with, I guess, quite holistically focused objectives of alleviating a broad range of complex issues that are many of which are perpetuated systemically through outdated economic, social, psychological, or cultural, socio-cultural, value systems and things like that. And that will require a massive collective fucking effort. And, I guess redirection of, planned. It needs to be very well thought out to create something that provides stability whilst embracing adversity, or embracing diversity and stuff like that. These massive complex conversations, creating a socially fluent, that was one of my little philosophical fucking concepts that have come up. We have had these oppressive social structures that basically create a hypo socially fluent state, like stagnant, where I'm trying to create a system that works the opposite, instead of fear-based, love-based, that takes the pressure off and facilitates stability whilst promoting a social state of, or a hyper socially fluent state, so people can adapt and explore themselves, and we can more truly embrace diversity in a, I guess, facilitating a more dynamic and evolving culture. And we need to create, look at how we can use all this technology which poses as massive liabilities to society, how we can turn that around and I guess collectively embrace it as assets in facilitating social stability whilst